Welcome to the Financial Monitoring Task Group. I declare the meeting open. Welcome to Merton.TV in the corner, and welcome to a member of the public. I hope you find this evening informative and to your liking. Let us start with apologies. I believe we do have an apology from Councillor David Williams. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? No? Before we look at the minutes, I propose that we change the order of the agenda and move item 6, the work programme, ahead of item 5, Veolia and Idverde, because of course item 5 contains potentially some exempt items, and you will be excluding the public from part of that discussion. Is that agreed? Excellent, thank you. So, moving on to the minutes, item 3. Any errors or omissions in the minutes, please? No? In that case, now I take the minutes as agreed. Thank you. Moving on to matters arising, I'm on page 1 of our pack. Update on lean learning reviews. That's the second bullet point of the matters arising. That is now scheduled for our meeting on the 4th of April. Moving on to bullet point 4, vacancy trends in the financial monitoring report. That is now included as page 72 in our pack. The July meeting date, Julia, has we got a date for that? Is that yet to be arranged?
Put that into the work programme item, because I'm suggesting either the 16th or 17th.
Fine, thank you. Now, at the last meeting, I'm on the final bullet point on page 1, a number of members asked if they could have copies of the business plan. Have members who wanted copies of the business plan received copies?
Yep.
Or would you like a copy?
Please, I would, yes.
Can we make a note of that, please, Julie?
Just to
Sorry, yeah.
say that obviously that was the current one. Papers which went to Cabinet and become to Council on 6th March renew. So you'll have a hard copy there as well. So just if you want old or moving on to.
We then have an action on the middle of page 2 where Councillor Pritchard and myself met with Rachel Wardell. Do you want to say anything about that meeting at this stage, Owen, or would you?
Yeah, so in terms of clarity, I did it over the phone because I was caught up at work. But I spoke to Rachel for about 45 minutes, looking at how financial risk was done and what we before described as enterprise-wide risk management versus what Rachel described as hypothecated risk management, which is quite clear. She said she's worked under a number of different systems in previous roles compared to this role, and sees the benefits and the weaknesses of both. Her overriding and is not tied to either, but her overriding comment on the weaknesses perhaps of this one is that the lack of a clear hypothecated risk and sort of tabular risk as to what people can do is that too many people don't understand the risks associated with the budget at any given time, and the risks that are being taken when budgets are set. Not so, I don't doubt for a moment that Rachel does, her immediate staff doesn't, the people setting the budgets do, but it's about that wider informing people that actually this is where risk is being taken, this is where we're not having sufficient mitigation at a departmental level, and so forth. I thought that was a good point. It was a worthwhile conversation. Is there anything you...
No, I think that describes it perfectly. It was a good meeting, I thought.
Yeah, exactly.
Joanne. Are there any other matters relating to the minutes of the last meeting that are arising that I haven't covered or aren't on the agenda? No? Okay. Thank you. Let us move on then to item 4, financial monitoring report for the third quarter. Caroline, is it you or Roger?
I'll do a brief introduction, Chair, that's okay. So this is the third quarter report which went to Cabinet last week, and as you will see on page 6, we have moved from an overspend of 215,000 to an underspend of roughly 1.5 million. So there has been some improvements in all departments and community housing. But I suppose I would say that this is still subject to winter pressures, although same winter pressures in the day like today. They seem a bit strange, but there has, with some of the flus, there has been some issues still in hospitals and some occupancy, so we are not out of the woods yet on that score. Clearly there's also the update on the capital programme, and I know in particular there's a request to re-review our capital programme and funding. So certainly we've got some information on normal monitoring on the capital in-year programme and the changes both in-year and slippage into the following years. We have the update on the savings for both 18-19 savings and 17-18, the progress being tracked against those. David's got his update on the overall debt monitoring report that we bring to you, which shows progress being made in some areas again, and some tricky areas, but with the amount of debt that we are raising on a regular basis, even spending still in some ways is quite an achievement in these challenging times. And then, as you've alluded to, we have the establishment control reports with David's information attached as an appendix to us as well. So that sort of sets the overview, and then happy to take questions.
I think we'll try and progress through the report as it were, page by page or section by section, so we're not jumping backwards and forwards, if that's okay. So kind of looking at the overall summary on page 6, is there any questions we would like to put to officers on this overview?
It's a big positive swing in the space of a month, isn't it? 1.7 million. Are there any elements within that that we can see as not just sort of one-off features, but things that will now prevail to enable us to take into account when setting the budgets for next year?
So I think if you look on page 6, one of the biggest swings was in environment regeneration, and unfortunately that I think was due on page 11 to the testing of the ERF facility, so that is unlikely to be ongoing. Certainly we're expecting some of the improvements within community housing and social care places to continue, but we do need to see how the effects of winter play through, so we're hopeful that certainly the level of underspends in some areas may continue. We just need to keep an eye on it. And I think working with Roger and colleagues, it's probably too early to say in some of these areas how many or how much will continue, or there are some areas where it then leads back to savings that are already in the business plan.
Let us move on to the corporate services section, pages 7 to 9. May I just ask a question about the increase in income from the bailiff service, 286,000. I was just wondering how much money the bailiff service brought in and how significant is that varying? I mean, has it doubled? Is it a tenth? What sort of magnitude is it?
So regarding, so the bailiff service runs for Merton and for Merton and Son.
Yeah.
They collect statutory costs and also the debt. The budget is set for expenditure of that unit, and then we offset that against the costs that they raised while statutory collecting that debt, if you like. For Merton this year, that has gone up, partly due to, I think I mentioned previously, partly due to the increase in PCNs through ANPR. I think we're now forecasting to collect about £1.5 million in costs for the Merton operation and about 500,000 for the Sutton operation.
Where does contract monitoring fall? Does it fall within specific departments or within corporate services as a whole?
Individual contract managers are responsible for overall monitoring of their contracts. We do have a procurement board with departmental representatives, and I think there's one here as well, to then look at how we're doing overall the contracts. So we then sort of cascade down through the operational procurement groups to see how they're dealing with the major contracts as well.
With a view to the contract we're speaking about later, I don't get ahead of myself, I just want to set the context. The Veolia contract, is that done within this or done within?
No, done within the service department.
Okay, thank you.
So let us move on then to the environment and regeneration section, pages 10 to 12. Slightly there, Chris, no questions for you.
Again, we're staying with the
A late contender.
Yes, this comment that the section has continued to experience a reduction in total waste tonnages. So can we expect that again to continue?
Well, we hope it will continue, but they often have a cycle similar to the economic cycle, and when the economy is more buoyant, people produce more waste. We're currently experiencing a slight downturn in waste volumes, and thankfully more of that being recycled. So it's more hope rather than expectation, but with the service change that we're looking at later, we can anticipate that irrespective of that, more of it will go towards recycling rather than residual waste.
Okay.
So if we move on to children's schools and family section, pages 13 to 17.
If I can just
Yeah.
say, the front summary focuses very much on our general fund. What is in here on page 17 is that an increase in the forecast overspend of the dedicated schools grant. However, this was before we got some additional grant funding in 1819 and 1920, but that's only roughly £400,000. So we will still have a significant deficit at year end.
So this underspending then of 5.3 million,
Overspend.
sorry, overspend, yes. This overspend of 5.2 million, where is that reflected in the executive's?
That's what I said, it's not.
It's not.
No, because we focus purely on the general fund items.
Right.
Dedicated schools grant is separate, but we are likely to be having a negative balance on our balance sheet when we come to close the accounts for this. But we're in discussions with our external auditor to leave corporate.
Okay. Fine, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if I can ask about big item overspend on independent day school provision, just to make sure I understand what that is exactly and whether we have any control over it.
So this is where children with an EHCP plan are going out of borough. There are some significant costs associated with some of the schools. We are looking to see, and I think some of the work we're doing, to see if there's any way we can negotiate better rates with the providers. But it's their market. So this is an area that's been looked at across London and across other councils as well. So So that's partly why we've built in some provision in the capital programme to expand our current special schools.
Yeah.
But that will only be then for new children coming through, not for the ones that are already there. It's very difficult to move children who are already there.
Thank you.
Can I just also ask about the SEND transport on page 14? Because I seem to recall this has been a recurrent problem in forecasting this. I have this kind of feeling that last year or the year before, maybe both years, there was an overspend of $500,000 or more. And now we seem to be saying there's an overspend of $1 million, as if the whole thing is the costs are increasing dramatically and unexpectedly, or we haven't really got a handle on the forecasting and budgeting of these costs.
It's a very difficult area to forecast because a child who, depending on their circumstances, may need transport at any time. So we are doing a review across children's and adults transport services anyway to review our provision. We're also looking at the offer that we make, because people come and say, we need a taxi. It's like, well, no, first point of call should be you can get a travel card, then you can get a bus, then you can get a taxi, or you can get direct payments, or you can get travel training. So we're just making sure that that's fully understood. And we have also implemented what we call a direct purchasing system, so that each of the routes then tendered. So we're reviewing each of the journeys the children are making, but it's still very difficult to budget for who you don't know who's going to be there come changing terms.
Is that the same sort of reason that we don't do in-house, is because it's insufficiently flexible to sort of project how many people we would need to employ, or is it, why you talked about reviewing provision? What provision do we currently do in-house, and if none, why not?
So certainly some children get a taxi because they need to travel with a carer, they can't travel with other children, they're too violent to be able to do that, or they may need medical equipment to go with them in a taxi. So therefore we do need taxis as well as buses. So what we're doing is looking at the type of buses that we have to see are they sufficient, do we need bigger buses, smaller buses, and are they able to, you also have to take into account how long a child is going to be on a bus. So coming back to the independent day, some of our children are travelling quite far, so therefore it's better for them to be in a taxi than a bus being dropped off all the way around.
And just to be clear, the bus provision is in-house. That's all
Yeah,
in-house.
We've covered off dedicated school grants. On page 21, in the middle there, the table, we have the no recourse to public funds, where the budget was 21,000, but the forecast is 294,000, and last year we were 353 overspent. And I'm just thinking that isn't this issue of where we should be putting in a budget figure but are not putting in a budget figure? Does that continue?
So this is the area where we've had the discussion. This is new burdens and new responsibilities we've had placed upon us and insufficient funding to cover it.
But I mean, in terms of our budget for next year, 1920, have we put something in next year's budget, or are we going to be...
There is £500,000 gone in for children's and families next year. Rachel is to come forward where she wants that budget to go.
So we could have already, as it were, identified an overspend for next year of 300,000. Any other questions, colleagues, on children's schools and families? Let us move on to community and housing, on page 23. Any questions, officers, on community and housing?
Which page did you say, John?
23. Shall we move on to the capital programme? So the capital programme budget starts at page 29. Is there any detail officers would like to add to help aid our understanding of the capital programme?
So if you see on page 29, we've got some additional grant funding from DfE to assist with our schools. So we're looking to give that back out to schools. So I think this was the money that was set aside for almost odds and, it wasn't quite odds and sods, but it implied that. So we're giving this money out to schools. So we're just seeing if they've got capacity to spend it. And this year there may be some slippage coming forward in this area for next year. And we have pushed hard at budget managers to make sure that they are forecasting appropriately and accurately and what slippage may need for next year. So certainly we are aware that there will be some TfL schemes where the monies will be split into next year. And as you can see, there's quite a few already in this report, and there's likely to be more before year end as well.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question, really? Could you just explain to me, please, sorry, how temporary accommodation expenditure works? You know, where the demand comes from, where the money to pay for it comes from, how much the council bears vis-a-vis sort of the benefits coming from central government. I'm looking at page 26, sorry.
So for families where we have a responsibility to house them on an interim basis, we will provide the accommodation for them, so we will then pay the landlords or owners of accommodation for that. The families, some of them will be entitled to housing benefit, so you will then see there is temporary accommodation housing benefit coming through. We also get quite significant contributions because some of our homeless families are actually in work, so therefore we get sort of the 576k contribution. However, if you're in temporary accommodation, there is a cap on the amount of benefit subsidy that you can get for those families. So there's always likely to be a shortfall on that. So therefore that's an additional cost. So even if people are on full benefit, we don't get the full subsidy for it, so therefore that falls back to council.
So how much does it cost, in very simple terms, how much does it cost the council's budget? How much does temporary accommodation cost us each year?
From this 500,000 for this area, there are other costs associated with it, so that's part of it, is not the total quantum. Because there's the homelessness reduction as well, work that goes on as well.
So to give you an idea, somebody placed in a room or a placement in the borough, the average sort of rent for a single family is about £303. We will get about 50% of that back from the government in housing benefit subsidy. So 50% shortfall. That's even if they're receiving the maximum housing benefit. So for every single person in temporary accommodation where the rent's £300, the council is funding about 150 of that each week.
Okay, and it isn't a debate now. I suppose the reason I'm asking the question is the wider sort of choices and decisions that we make, like sort of building social housing, owning social housing, and how much that costs us versus what we do here, which is going to the free market. And we all know how expensive it is to live in London. Yeah, I think that's enough for the time being. Thank you.
So, shall we move on to the debtors position of starting on page 59? Seeing colleagues don't have questions on the intervening pages. I may start the questions by asking about my favourite subject, car parking age debts on page 67. It always seems to hover around the kind of 4 and a bit million. I'm just wondering now, I see there's an average value and a number of PCNs. I'm just wondering if there's a number of vehicles. I mean, do you have an idea how many vehicles are involved in all this debt?
The straight answer is probably no. I don't know if Chris does, but
It's a bit of an unfair question.
so often we'll see just individual tickets for individual car owners. Sometimes we might see 10, 15, 20 for persistent offenders.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon to have 2 or 3. So whilst I can't give you an answer, there's a spread. We could look, but it will only be cases that are with us and not necessarily the debt that's before it's reached us. So, I mean, if that's something that you
Well,
would like, then I
I'll
can
tell
see
you
what
where
I
I'm
can do.
going with this now.
Okay.
No, it's not really councillors' roles to interfere in operational efficiencies and process. But I was just thinking, well, if there's several thousand vehicles involved in all these PCNs,
Yeah.
is there not more we can do to, as it were, get money back from them? And I'm just wondering whether we can name and shame on number plates and say, these are the top 20 vehicles that have outstanding PCNs owing to Merton. If you recognise this vehicle registration number, contact yourself, say, and we will start enforcement procedures. Perhaps it's not my place to say this, but I've said it now.
Chris, I'll speak to one of yours,
Yeah.
unless you know.
Yeah, I mean, these vehicles could be anywhere in the country. And I know the bailiff team work tirelessly to track these people down. And I think the threat of that knock on the door at 5 AM and the removal of your vehicle is a significant threat that these people face. And whilst the number has moved slightly upwards, it needs to be set in the context of the number of PCNs being issued increasing significantly. So in the scheme of things, relatively to that numerator, the amount outstanding has gone down.
What we do find is probably a third of the vehicles that get passed to us, they're registered outside of Merton, outside of the surrounding boroughs. So, and Chris is right, whilst so often it's too far to go to knock at their door, but we have camera vans, ANPR vans that pick up any vehicle where there's an outstanding debt. So if you're driving around, you go into a car park, you go into the car park out there and we find a vehicle that there's an outstanding PCN on, then we'll deal with it that way as well.
We talked about factoring the debt in the previous meeting. Have we got any further on that? Selling the debt? Using these old ones?
So it was discussed. I didn't realise there was an action to actually.
I thought you were going to think about it.
I think that can come back in the report we're doing for April,
Yeah.
because we're doing an update on debt.
That would be useful.
Yeah.
It's sitting there, something we should try to get something from sold it.
Thank you, Chair. Chris made the point that these vehicles can be anywhere in the country, and I was just wondering how are councils interconnected across the country to take back the debt from persistent people around the country, because there's an inter-debtors scheme, as it were. I don't know if one exists, the relationship there is with other councils and the neighbouring boroughs as well.
We haven't got anything in place. Nothing formal. We did have a very informal arrangement with, I think, a council in Wales who contacted us about how we operate. But if I'm honest, very little come of that. But what we do use, where the debt is out of area and sort of away from a radius of Merton, we'll have 3 months of trying to collect it, writing to them, trying to find it on the cameras, then we'll pass it to an external bailiff company who are nationwide, and they'll try and collect it for us.
So do they, in fact, take title to the debt at that point?
So they take the debt, if they collect the debt, they pass the whole debt back to Merton, but they would retain the statutory fees that they can charge in collecting that debt, just as we would as an in-house debt.
How successful is that? What figures on?
So for parking debts, we collect, once the debts are passed to us, we collect probably about 25 to 29% of those cases that are passed to us. The only sort of comparison that I've got through benchmarking, and it was a couple of years ago, was that was higher than most private bailiff companies. Theirs was about 19–20%.
Sorry, I'm being stupid. It's passed to you.
Yeah.
Sorry, so they find them.
Oh no, sorry,
So
the
the
whole,
debt sits with Chris first.
the whole,
Sorry.
yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
The debt sits with Chris first.
Right.
Then-
Oh, I see. Okay.
Then gets
okay.
passed when they decided
And
that.
they take them to court.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you for answering those questions. Okay. Shall we move on to Appendix 9, the vacancies report, report, starting on page 68. Draw colleagues' attention to page 72, where we now have the last three quarters, or the position at the end of the last 3 quarters numbers. It seems to me, now I've seen these figures presented in this way, that what is slightly unclear is whether, as it were, not much has occurred in terms of unfilled vacancies and vacancies covered by agency workers, whether the figures as presented are masking turnover in the sense that a lot of new vacancies have come on board and a lot of old vacancies have been filled. So it kind of looks like a quite static position in the land. But can you give me a feel for the churn, please?
So we have a target of turnover of 12% and below that. But certainly I would say we have churn on agency workers in particular areas. And in some ways that may be picked up with the report which goes to standards and GP for those over £30 an hour. Just trying to think whether we look to see if we can have number of posts recruited to during the quarter, if that's available to assist with that.
The only thing that occurs to me looking at these numbers is that if we take December, we've got 180 unfilled vacancies, which must mean we're saving that number of salary costs. I'm just thinking it would be quite useful to know what that monetary figure was. And it would also be interesting to know whether those unfilled vacancies were being covered by temporary staff or consultants or other people like that, and how much that cost was, because then we would see what is the potential saving and what is the potential additional spend by virtue of having unfilled vacancies.
Sorry, I thought we had a subjective analysis in the report, but unfortunately, the FTEs covered by agency workers are more likely to offset the cost of the unfilled vacancies. Or some of those vacancies are being held for savings to be delivered in future years. So you won't see a really big underspend on employee costs as a result of that. So for
You
example,
said that too fast for me.
so some of our children agency workers
Yes.
cost significantly more than the posts. So if you've got 2 vacancies in children's,
Yeah.
you're not going to save the salary cost of 2 because the cost of the agencies will be significantly higher.
Right, okay. But that still leaves us with a potential number to manage, doesn't it? Because if supposing our vacancies are 2 roles at £50,000, and we're actually kind of half covering that by having one agency worker at, say, £100,000, there's this £50,000 kind of that would be incurred if we filled one of those vacancies.
Yeah. If you remember the last Overview and Scrutiny Commission, actually one of the points I believe the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission brought up was the fact that we were gapping people with a view to not employing them in the future. So I think it's been clearly accounted for when we looked at the budget then, because we looked at people, if I remember rightly, you questioned, so we're actually not getting rid of anyone, we're just saving by not employing people back. So I think what's happening here is that you're talking 2 ends of the same road, if that makes sense, because it was covered during the Overview and Scrutiny Commission that there would be some gaps that we wouldn't look to fill because we'd have to take them as a redundancy in years 2 and 3 or whatever the case may be. So I think that's where that mismatch is, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Gary, that's helpful. Is that, I think with your recollection?
Yes, it does.
Okay, super. Well, let us move on from that then.
Given the cost of agency workers, is this constant 200? Is that a number of temporary, short positions, or are we talking about agency workers used a lot like we do in law to cover things which we can't actually fulfil?
It's a combination. So some are covering maternity leave, secondments, some are employed to do some project work for us, and some we just cannot recruit in certain areas. So therefore we're looking at the apprenticeship levy now to see if we can grow our own, so particularly in legal and in some of Chris's professional areas.
No, that's more my next question was legal, okay.
Colleagues, have any other questions on the quarterly report, the finance report? Thank you very much, Caroline, and thank you, Roger. And thank you also for the answering all of our questions. I think we now move on to item 6, which we're bringing forward, the work programme. We're obviously considering what we intend to do in April and July, but we also have to think about our work programme for the following year. And please note that the Scrutiny Commission has asked us in particular to consider the capital programme, the future capital programme, that's top line of page 108. Are people content with the agenda items for our meeting on the 4th of April, set out on page 107?
Yeah, can I just make a point of clarity that I think to understand Merton, I might be mistaken because I know that is wrong, so all of this could be wrong. But is that to understand that in the context in which it's being, those decisions are being made, would it be helpful to know the context of our financial picture with regards to temporary accommodation? Because I think some decisions about how Merton develops and progresses and whether or not it's used for social accommodation or whatever the case may be, has to be set against the backdrop of how the council deals with its temporary accommodation waiting list, right, the people involved, and its expenditure. Does that, or am I kind of, I'm looking for the knowledge who wants to come from barking at the wrong tree, and we can look at Merton without knowing that context, because if I'm right, I'd like to know a bit more about that first, if that makes sense.
So currently Merton's only looking at 77 units, so So it's not going to solve the temporary accommodation?
No, of course, no,
Yeah, so, and
I know the
also-
scale issue is different.
Yeah,
but it's
we
different
had
context.
major discussions in the setting up of the company around, is it for social housing or is it for private rented sector accommodation? And the decision was taken that it would be private rented sector at that time. So therefore, I don't know, Chris, is
Yeah, so its objects, as set in the documents lodged with Companies House, are that it's a development company for profit,
Yeah.
to make a return for the council. There will be an element of social housing as per our planning policy, and whether that's used for those people who are statutory homeless in the authority will be, I suspect, a matter of how many units and what their homelessness situation is at that time that those properties are available. But we'll sell those units to an RP, a registered provider, and we'll have nomination rights to all those units. So we're talking about probably across 77, maybe 30 units in terms of the proportion. The majority of the units will be private rental, and that's where the return to the council will come from. So this isn't a vehicle to meet or reduce our temporary accommodation.
Yeah,
per se.
and I've spoken to what I believe the need for income generation and new income streams previously, and I'm not going to recycle that. My gut instinct is to think, great, but what I know is that a lot of people are concerned about what they see as efforts going into the any form of building when we have a shortage of housing, that we've chosen to do that. So I don't dive into it now, but can I just ask and sort of forewarn that you speak to the decision making that resulted in the objectives that you've lodged with Companies House at the beginning to set the context for Miranda, rather than just accepting it is what it is and we're just judging it on its own merits. I actually want it'd be nice to go to first principles and actually say with some kind of explanation. Thank you.
And I suppose some other context for you is obviously we no longer have a housing revenue account.
No,
So those authorities that have a social housing company have a housing revenue account, and therefore that enables them to take different decisions to us.
Thank you.
So perhaps we should think now about items to consider for our work programme for next year, 1920. Do committee members have views on areas you would specifically like to look into?
Yeah, something has come up in the last couple of weeks or so is the way in which the allocation of grants to the voluntary sector takes place, which I think we used to be more closely signed with on the Commission, but now it's a role of the partnership. I don't think we look at that very closely at all. We probably should understand the principles.
So we potentially have the grants to the voluntary sector, the future capital programme.
Sorry, can I just clarify, is that the strategic grants or is that all grants? Because departments have got different grants. So if basically you want the whole thing or just the lot 1 and lot 2 that's just been
Right.
because I'm aware that Chris has significant grants in his area as well. What you could do is look at, we publish the grants to voluntary organisations on the website just to then see is there a particular area you want to focus on.
Yes, I think it's probably just to ensure that we have an understanding of the way in which grant applications are considered, scored, that kind of thing. Yeah, the process.
But there's different applications and processes
Yes,
for different
yeah.
grants, so it's
Okay, I think it's strategic partners.
yes. That's fine. If you
Yeah.
have that, then
Yeah.
it's,
So potentially we've got at the moment 2 deep dives, haven't we? One on grants, one on future capital programme. I suppose I should have started with this by how many meetings should this task group have?
fortnightly.
Or can it?
Can it have? Yes, because obviously there's an issue about resources and resources needed to accommodate our questions and reviews. Is it 3 or 4 meetings that we are supposed to have?
Maximum of 4.
Maximum of 4. Okay.
One for each quarter.
One for each quarter.
Yeah.
So on that basis, we'd be looking at a meeting, if we follow this year's practice, of a meeting in November, February, April, July. Let's say the next meeting will be July, so the next meeting will be April, then July, then November, and then back to February 2020.
Pushing your life away, Joe.
Yes, yes.
I'm not sure how July will work, because although so the outturn report will be ready 16th, 17th before it goes to standards of general purposes, but I think that the first quarter of the next financial year wouldn't be ready for that early in July.
And I've got 17th as a council meeting.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Everyone suddenly checks.
System's broken down.
But that may be wrong, I don't know. So.
I know in some previous years you've had 2 meetings in July, one for the outturn and one for quarter 1. Some years you've had July and then September for quarter 1 and then November for quarter 2. But it depends really where you want to
So we
focus the financial monitoring perhaps.
So we could go late July or early September, couldn't we? Because I'm assuming nobody wants to do August.
Did August last year?
Yeah.
Something
The end of
really.
August. Would it be late July doable? Quarter 1?
Council meeting's on the 10th.
Oh, it's 10th, oh, okay, sorry.
Possible.
It would have to be that last week.
It'd have to be the last week.
Okay. Do colleagues have a preference for late July or early September?
Late July.
But by late July, you see the last week of July.
Yeah.
So it's summer holidays, but yeah.
Is that a possibility that we could not, rather than the 16th or 17th, we go that very last week of July?
Can we check, because we haven't done a
Check.
timetable for the monitoring
Yeah.
yet, so if we
Subject
should
to check.
confirm that
Yeah.
for you.
Okay. And then we'll circulate potential dates for November and February as well at some stage. May I invite colleagues to send ideas for our work programme by email to Julia and to myself, please? Okay, I think we move on to the final agenda item, Veolia and Idverde. That's
So
actually...
just before we do that, I think there'll be some people just leaving, so it's just to...
Oh, of course, yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So what I've asked to do is to make a general introduction, which will not involve numbers and commercially sensitive pieces of information. I'll invite councillors to ask any questions they have about what Chris has just introduced. Chris will of course be very careful in his answers not to stray into areas of commerciality. Then I'll have to ask members of the public to leave, so Chris can again pick up the baton and talk about some of the financial numbers and answer our questions about those financial numbers. Is that okay with everyone? Okay.
Just for clarity,
Yes,
I mean, financial numbers include any sort of per offence
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So tend not to use effects.
Okay.
Yes,
Defaults.
Okay. Just a few words really of introduction in the public part of the discussion. First point is that, as you said, Chair, the report deals, particularly in the exempt part, with commercially sensitive information regarding deductions that are still not finalised. And as such, they're only for members' eyes, and should we wish to discuss them, then that would need to be in the exempt part. I have said to members before that once we do conclude the deductions and we've got an agreed figure, that I'll report that in public, and that's still the intention. But whilst they are unconcluded, it's a matter of speculation, and therefore it's commercially sensitive. Second point to make is that financial incentives and deductions, and we're looking at both parts here, what drives the contractor to do more and where do we deduct from and where they don't perform, are part but not the whole of the contractual relationship. So we're looking at a small aspect of it tonight, and they need to be set in that context. And it's more of an art than a science, this, that if you set the deductions for each item too high, then contractors will price that into the contract at the outset because it's a risk, and you'll end up paying more. If you set them too low, then you get the wrong behaviour. And so getting that calibration right and having the overall relationship with the contractor right and selecting the right contractor is obviously fundamental. So just to set it in that context, this isn't the only part of the contract that drives performance. Third point is that we have applied the contract deductions and the incentives, as can be seen from the papers in the exempt part of the agenda, and we've done that consistent with the application with the other three boroughs, and it's all part of the South London Waste Partnership management of these contracts and local management of these contracts. And and increasingly so, most of those deductions are applied automatically because of the integration of our system with Veolia's. Some of them, as you'll see from the papers, rely upon inspections, and that's where the client officers are vitally important. But the point to stress here is that reporting service failure is absolutely fundamental to any deduction, because it alerts the contractor to where it's wrong, and I acknowledge that our IT, that the CRM system isn't where we want it to be in terms of its functionality, but we're working hard on that. The annual review allows for consideration and tweaking of these arrangements to ensure we get the right behaviour, and annual reviews are built into both contracts, Idverde and Veolia. Then the final point I'll make is that we might find it hard to believe, but we're still, particularly with the Veolia contract, still at a relatively early stage in our contractual relationship, particularly because of the significance of the service change that we had in the autumn. But that was only 18 months into a contract that took our staff and took an existing methodology that we asked them to continue with until October last year. It's only post-October that we'll really start to see the benefits of containerisation and the model that will deliver, I believe, the outcomes that we're expecting. But I know we're focusing on the financial bits and happy on the financial elements. I'm happy to answer questions, and we've got colleagues both on Idverde, well, we've got colleagues from the council side managing both the Idverde contract, South London Waste Partnership represented in Annie Baker, and other colleagues dealing with the Veolia contract.
I just want to start with asking one to do with the sort of information. I was looking at Sutton, or had sent me the motion that Sutton had published, which requires of them to publish on the council's website Veolia's monthly performance for each SPI against the contractual target, so that residents can see the actual performance being delivered, and also publish on the council's website the number, though not the financial value, of deductions per month for each SPI, so the residents can see that the council is holding Veolia accountable where its performance fails to meet the contracted standard. Are we all able to do both those things?
Well, you have some of that in the appendix tonight, You have it for the last 12 months with regard to Veolia. The deductions that we're actually proposing to make for the SBIs that apply in that case. And we're working on an agreed set of SBIs across the whole partnership that we intend to publish on the SLWP site, but with links from each respective council. And at the moment that's still in discussion with Veolia, so that some of it's been based upon, one of the problems has been the IT integration and making sure, and it might sound very simple, but making sure that we have a system which deals with the gateway checks, that for example a missed bin is really a missed bin, that it was presented properly and was actually missed, and then hadn't been rectified within the required period after being reported, and after that then it becomes a matter of deduction and can be reported on in the performance figures, and that's our intention.
Why is Sutton able to do this at this stage? Just they're further down the line? They are giving their residents more detail about how they're managing the contract. I think one of Merton's problems is the impression out there is, I suspect unfairly, it's not being managed. So we're trying to help you to say to the residents what's happening.
If I could ask Annie's here. Annie's the partnership manager for South London Waste Partnership and coordinates the approach across all 4 boroughs, including Sutton. Anybody want to cover that?
So I think it's true that all of the OT work was done at an earlier point in Sutton because their service changes came in earlier. But what we're looking at doing as a partnership is an agreement for all 4 partner boroughs around exactly how the performance information should be reported so that it's consistent, so that we're not looking at different systems. We do have different systems that take the information that is received from residents, so different CRMs. But if we can present that in a way that means we can look and compare directly the different things we're presenting, that's clearly much more user-friendly and useful for my team as well as for wider communication systems.
And on the point of reporting mechanisms, it's quite easy for residents to put in their first electronic miscollection. It's very difficult then to say they've not turned up again. You get this 2 days to say they've missed it. The system then won't let you go in to say it's been missed again. People haven't had half an hour to wait on the phone ringing up, and it's still a long time. I've tried recently. The mechanism, it seems to assume that once you report it will be solved, and the whole mechanism works from the fact that if it's not solved there's a penalty, but there's no way of telling people it's not been solved. Now, that's a real issue, surely.
And that's linked to Veolia unlocking the system at their end on the Echo. Their system's called Echo, which links to our CRM. It requires them to unlock it to say, yes, we have been and recollected that waste, if that's the example we're giving. And until it's unlocked, the resident can't re-report.
Yeah, but there's a problem there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
Because they've got no incentive to do that. And so the resident's sitting there trying to get in and can't.
I don't know what Annie's
So, once the task is open, if you like, you can't keep reporting it whilst it's open because otherwise you just end up with job after job arriving in a system and it's very difficult for that to be manageable. But we can see the task you can log the task again once it's closed, as I understand it. So once it's closed, we can see that it's closed, and then if the resident says it hasn't been picked up, that's reportable, visible. And for as long as it isn't closed, we can see that it isn't closed, and so those refreshers are.
So can we tell residents if they can't get in to complain, that's because it's not been closed on the system, and therefore Veolia are being ratcheting up day on 5? Is that what's happening?
The refresh applies in those cases.
And it is
yeah.
automatically.
Yeah.
Well, this is what you should be saying to residents. They think this is just frustrating. I've complained, I can't get in, nothing's happening.
And in terms of the public space omitted the 2 weeks on the time. Several so much manpower is being wasted because they are being behind. They are trying to catch up their emails and etc. By the time the ketchup or something, the issue probably have been dealt with 2 weeks ago. And what I am struggling to understand with the online system in terms of reporting collection or a request for a new bin or a street needs cleaning. And I have done it so many times, and it makes me wonder if there's actually any manner actually look into it, or are they being with it? Do you understand?
I think so.
I think you essentially question, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think this plays the question I was going to ask about the resourcing of the responses and the sort of contractual monitoring. That's it.
Yes, and what I'm saying with public space and for they want to be 2 different teams. And I think with the public space, hopefully are wasting of their own time. They are catching up old emails, which is already dealt with Veolia. But there are some other cases which have never been taken any action on. There always a waste of manpower because I get a response say, thank you for your email, we will chase this up, blah blah, and follow this up, and guess what? Nothing happens. And therefore it's a waste of the council time if Veolia doesn't follow it up.
So, let me be absolutely clear. Nobody around this side of the table is happy with the performance that we have with Veolia. And we are working tirelessly with Veolia to ensure that the performance improves. And we can see that...
I disagree because I time again follow it up. And I keep getting apologies email saying sorry, we are being behind, blah blah.
So it's not in the papers this evening, but interestingly, Sustainable Communities tomorrow evening have an update on the Veolia contract, which is half of this paper tonight, which shows that since October, since the new service, there is improvement in flight performance in terms of collection in 24 hours. In missed bins going down, and that is a real sign of improvement with containerisation leading to improved recycling figures. They're clearly not at the level that's acceptable, but it is going in the right direction. Streets below grade continue to be a problem. The client side of the council's organisation is very small because we scaled it to a level which was affordable. And we have 3 neighbourhood client officers, and for a temporary period of time we added an additional 2 neighbourhood client officers for the period of mobilisation to deal with what we expected to be a significant additional workload. We're also going to invest temporarily in 3 what we're calling street inspectors, now that we've got the new method of collection, to focus specifically on the cleanliness of the streets in addition to the 3 NCOs, and to apply even more rigorously the deductions regime, but more importantly to encourage Veolia to get to the areas that require attention more rapidly. And we'll expect to see their behaviour change and performance improve further. But we are where we are, if you like, and performance is as reported tomorrow evening at Sustainable Community. We will get to the situation where we have much more online.
Yes. Which for is all of them. Okay, in terms of my power, I feel the public space team are using their resources. They're always chasing them, so they're always replying, yes, we will follow this up, blah blah, and go on. But no action is being made. I feel, I'm not convinced they're using the council term.
They're using.
I said we have put additional resource into the complaint service and additional resource into the contact centre to manage the increasing complaints and issues that have come through. But that is still taking its time to come through. So we are working through, and we have separate. I'm not sure if that's in the papers for tomorrow.
But in the recent well shop public art space admitted they were 2 weeks behind schedule.
A lot of the public space inbox is unfortunately taken up by the public writing to them rather than using the council's online facility. So the function of the neighbourhood client officers has been massively distorted in that they're becoming another complaints inbox, they're becoming another customer contact centre, and actually extracting them from that and getting them to do the job they were originally paid to do is quite a task because they've been distracted to dealing with those things that arrive in their inbox, which isn't really what they should be dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Can I just come in there as the cabinet member that's come to terms with the Veolia contract? I'm not sure that some of the debate that we're heading towards is towards financial monitoring, and I think that some of the points that are raised are more appropriate for tomorrow night's Idverde Scrutiny meeting. But I think that I'm not hearing anything new in terms of the comments about feedback from some residents about using their the way they report things and not getting feedback. I'm aware, and I will, wherever I can, I'll influence development of the IT systems so that you can track, because we have a self-service system that largely works, but it doesn't give the feedback. And that's the flaw. That the resident who reports something is not hearing what's happened. Because I know the system and I report a lot online, I can come in and see what's happening to these generally. I'm satisfied that those that are reported, the vast majority of fly tip reports and street flow grades are treated appropriately. But what we hear is the ones that are not all the time. And then a resident is frustrated. They didn't know that maybe after 48 hours they could report, but actually they have trouble re-reporting because they're then told that it's beyond the time for their miscollection to report. So what we need to do is make sure that we're giving some sort of feedback, and I would like to see in any development in the future some enhanced technology that gives an email back, or even like when you go to a dentist or make an appointment, you get a text message the day before saying, don't forget your appointment, but something that says this has now been closed off to the council satisfaction. If you think it's not, come back to this number or report in this way. So we're dealing with a flawed system that's actually had to take a huge increase in online reporting. And I have confidence that most are dealt with properly. But we do need to deal with that. But I think that's a debate for how we manage at the Idverde Scrutiny tomorrow night. And what we should be talking about is some of the mechanisms that I don't want to impose on you, but I believe that the discussion should be more about the mechanisms for looking for defaults and how that's dealt with.
Thank you, Mike. I think that is a useful explanation of what should be taking place tonight in terms of financial scrutiny and what should take place tomorrow in terms of the reporting process and interaction with residents. So I take that entirely. I think Eleanor wanted to ask a question and Owen did.
Owen may ask my question.
Okay, Eleanor and then Owen.
So it links to this, but hopefully focusing on the monitoring. So yeah, what's really interesting for us and the public can't see it is seeing that deductions are actually being made, or hopefully being made when there is evidence and when everything is going through properly. And we're very lucky, particularly in Abbey, to have lots of really engaged residents who are very good to report things properly. As you just said, the issue is they're not being encouraged to do so. In fact, I would suggest that maybe some residents feel like that they're being told it's kind of, you know, they feel like it's a hassle and they feel like they're kind of nagging when they're doing it. Whereas the message should be that as residents, when this evidence is being reported properly, we are able to make these deductions, and it actually helps to hopefully both improve the contract and improve the kind of financial position. So it's kind of a link to what you're saying, can we move more towards that way of viewing residents reporting rather than making it difficult for them than they
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I would say I would rather have a contract that didn't require any deductions, and we've got a contractor that's performing, and I'd rather have a contract where it's much easier to report the failure where they are in the exception. And I accept that we don't have that arrangement at the moment, but we do have some significant improvements to the front end of the CRM system planned, and hopefully coming along soon, so that we can make it easier for residents to do that. But hopefully in a few months we'll be in a much better place in terms of Veolia's performance, the sort of bedding in of the new arrangements, and you know the behaviour of some residents in terms of some of the fly tipping that we have that blights the streets and creates some of the problems that we're tackling on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, I'm going to start with a short anecdote, and I know that's normally Councillor Brandt's terrain, to say about how his grandfather was...
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, so 10 days ago I went out to monitor House street cleaning, and this is specifically to do with the street cleaning aspect, in response to a complaint is done. I had a copy of the task sheet, took videos of the street before and after, and had a conversation with the operator of the Johnson street cleaning truck. I find it quite amusing, they're called Johnsons, but that's my pure sense of humour. I make a few observations. The task sheet was empty and the operator stated he has never had any guidance on how clean the street should be. Right? None at all. I.e. the size and the nature of the material, what should be left behind, bearing in mind that he didn't know the difference between grade A and B, wasn't a lexicon that was familiar to him, and therefore there was no chance of him getting it to the grade A as required. He never left his vehicle other than to talk to me and never used any dismounted equipment. He claims that he was only Johnson on duty to cover the entire borough that afternoon. He claimed that his work never gets checked. He claimed that there was no day-to-day coordination of tasks and that each day he was just given a number of streets to clean, usually between 4 and 12, and told to crack on as best he could for that given day. And needless to say, the street remained dirty and never got to the required grade A standard. I'm sure no one here needs to see the evidence, but I do have the videos and so forth. With that in mind, it's specifically speaking to street cleaning now, because I genuinely think the introduction of bins, regardless of its teething problem, is a move for good, and accepting its teething problem is going in the right direction. But specifically with street cleaning, what processes and resources do you have in place to ensure the monitoring and therefore the deductions are taking place at that level?
Okay. So the resources I have, to pick up on that firstly, 3 neighbourhood client officers, and soon to have 3 additional street inspectors. But the resources beyond that are the population of the borough in terms of their awareness of what they think their street should look like, and the ability to report that through to the council, and for that to automatically go to Veolia as a report of a defect, and for them to go and inspect.
Can I play specifically to that, and I'm very sorry. This cleaning process was as a result of a member of public coming forward and saying the street was filthy, right? Then according to the contract, as a result of them saying that the street was filthy, the street cleaner should come out and clean it to grade A, yeah? Yep. Now, also according to the contract, they should get out and use the appropriate equipment, not stay in their vehicles, get out and use the appropriate equipment, get clean the vehicles, as is required for grade A cleaning, because they can't leave those big things there. None of that happened, right? So are we saying that it's incumbent upon the initial complainant resident to come back to us and say, actually, it's still not good enough? Or do we have a mechanism for going and checking that those streets reach grade A?
Yeah, we do, and we're increasing the capacity to do that. So just to describe how it should work, and it often does work, that the neighbourhood client officers pick up the reports that go through the CRM system from residents, and they know their patch anyway. They know where the dirty streets are, or the more regularly littered streets, and they inspect those. They inspect them, say, today on a Monday, and if it's not at the grade B standard, which is the standard below which they would require enforcement, they put it through to the CRM system, through to ECHO. Veolia have then 48 hours notice to bring that up to the required standard. And the neighbourhood client officer re-inspects after that period and then issues the financial deduction, and which is then refreshed on further visits in order to enforce that even more.
And
That's the way it works, and that is consistently applied.
And when it's done, when it's been, when people are asked to do it, it should go up to grade A though, shouldn't it, once they've done
When
it?
it's swept to grade A,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't fall below grade B.
Okay, so, and this is very again, I know this is operational weeds and, you know what I mean, but it's to do with the contractual mechanisms, is how can a individual know how to get it to
Know
level
how
A?
to get it.
Yeah, know what is required when they've got no direction in their particular vehicle. They don't know what size piece of paper they're left with is to be left behind. You know what I mean? Grade A should mean something. It should say, you don't leave a bottle, but you do leave a faggot. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure there's a working definition. But in terms of ensuring that that is done, how is that done if the operators are not aware of that?
And you're describing a real deficiency in, if it's correct, if what that operative
I'm
says.
not here to get that particular individual into trouble.
But if that's correct, then
It's a
that's...
sample of one, so it might be the outlier.
And I don't know how honest he was being, but if that's correct, then that's a real weakness in Veolia's training.
I can see he was honest to the point that I looked at his task sheet. I looked at, you know, he showed me all the documentation he had inside his wagon. There was nothing there saying this, you know, this is the level it needs. No aid memoir, to use a sort of old army expression for all of everything, you know, make sure you do your 5 and 20s or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But there was none of that. So I find it peculiar how we can enforce these contract mechanisms without that kind of passage of information to the lowest level of our operators, be they Violas or...
But to reassure you, we can, because it's an output-based specification, it's an output-based contract, and specifically designed so that we aren't getting into the detail of requiring the training and all of that input level information. The output, the DEFRA standard, grade A, grade B, is what is required, and Veolia organise themselves to deliver that with the appropriate training, development, machinery, rostering, frequency of street sweeping and so on. That is not our domain, and for us to interfere in that is dangerous territory. We might point out to them that the street isn't up to the required standard. We might point out that anecdote that we don't believe some of their staff have been given the appropriate training, but that's as far as that would go in terms of requiring them to meet the standard that we've set.
Which, as it, in that particular instance, isn't valid because the standard wasn't met. You know what I mean? I have a tendency to agree with you with regards to you know, I manage outputs and effects. You know what I mean? Great, you manage outputs and effects, but if those outputs aren't at the standard that they're contractually obliged to, that's when you deep dive into as to look as why, and don't just accept them per se. And it seems odd. There seems to be a number of what are systemic management errors that are leading to that, and it seems odd that we haven't, you know, that there's no handle on it.
Chris, I hear completely what you're saying, but I think we would be doing our residents a disservice if the Veolia here, we didn't hear their reflection on that anecdote. I think it's a useful, just to hear their approach to that.
And they'll be there tomorrow evening.
Oh, is no one able to do it today?
No, that's tomorrow.
No, that's tomorrow. Oh, I see.
So they'll, if that anecdote is played out again tomorrow, then they can
it won't be
respond
out.
to it.
Colleagues, I think we are staying
Oh, we are.
that it is better
No, I know.
covered tomorrow. So I think possibly it's now time
Whether
to...
that comes up tomorrow or not, I will be taking that forward, that particular one. But just to try and close that off, it is, you know, it's Veolia's management of their workforce. If they find that they're getting streets that are never coming back to the grade they should be on our second inspection, their monitoring of their staff should show which staff it is that are not performing. So we can't get into the detail of that, you know, telling them how to manage, because if we start telling Veolia how to do some of those things, they'll say, well, that will cost you money. What we're interested in is having clean streets in the end. That's what we want. Clean streets, and where streets fall below the grade, they are clean to the standard we want. If Veolia regularly do not do that, then they need to look at the operative they've got to see why that's not happening, and their monitoring systems. And that's the conversation I can take forward to Veolia.
There's a little bit of catch in the fact that it wasn't done as well.
Yes.
Just to add, sorry, on that process, obviously we have got the client team, as Chris explained, but there is also then the reactive inspections that they do, where they can, in the morning, go into CRM, look at the tasks that have been closed down by Veolia in Echo, and then actually go out and do joint inspections. So they'll never be able to do 100%, but if they were to do 10% on a daily, joint inspections, individual inspections, to actually review the quality of the work being undertaken on the tasks that have been closed. And that again is another mechanism which we can hold them to account and then reopen those tasks and apply deductions if the job's been closed down and then the work not carried out to the right standard.
I think I would like to move us on now to consideration of the exempt papers. So if I could ask members of the public to please leave at this stage.